Mm-hmm. So,
Now, shortly after World War II ends, then the Korean War
mm-hmm.
picks up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, can you tell me, do you remember much about the Korean War on this side or?
Well, that was when I married my husband, and
Okay.
that was going on while when we got married. So, of course, I was worried about him having to go overseas after we first got married, and I didn't want to go back home and live. And so that was when the school came in for him, the auditing school came in for him. So I didn't feel the effects of it as much maybe as other people because maybe their husbands or their family had to go overseas
Mhm.
to or, participate in the Korean War.
Okay. So was your
Uh-huh.
husband in the like, was he drafted or he just joined the
He joined,
service?
so he was in for 4 years in the Air Force.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, uh-huh.
Oh, okay.
And then after he got out of the Air Force, we went back to Roanoke, and he was transferred from, the Roanoke GMAC office to the Richmond GMAC office because and they said if anybody left the company to join the war, to enlist, they would promise them a job when they got back. So he went back to Roanoke to the GMAC office, and they said, "We don't have any space for you. We're gonna transfer you to Richmond." So then we moved to Richmond then.
Oh, okay.
Uh-huh, and then from Richmond, we went to DC, and he worked there for a while, and, um, then he retired when he was only, like, 40, and then after he got out of the Air Force, we went back to Roanoke, and he was transferred from, the Roanoke GMAC office to the Richmond GMAC office because they said if anybody left the company to join the war, to enlist, they would promise them a job when they got back. So he went back to Roanoke to the GMAC office, and they said, "We don't have any space for you. We're gonna transfer you to Richmond." So then we moved to Richmond.
Hi, this is Sarah, and you're listening to a special three-part series on Ladies First Not Really, where I had the opportunity to interview 94-year-old Violet Pennick, and she shares her life story with me and memories of World War II. This is part three.
Then.
Oh, okay.
Uh-huh, and then from Richmond, we went to DC, and he worked there for a while. Then he retired when he was only, like, 48
Wow.
because, I don't know, I didn't want him to retire so early because I was wondering, "Well, what are we gonna do?" He said, "Well," he said, "it's getting so bad." He was kind of the office manager and also the accountant, and it was rough in DC, and so he wanted to be transferred back to Roanoke, and they didn't have an opening. And so he said, "I think I'm gonna retire." And I said, "Well, so early." I wasn't for it. But anyway, he said, "We'll do okay. We'll do fine." Maybe he was 48, yeah. And so then we moved from DC. Where would he where would we like to live? Because we had ties to our family, of course, in Roanoke, and his family was from Roanoke. And I don't know, both families were pretty big. His family was large, mine was large, and we were kinda carefree then. And I said and our boys were grown then. They had started college from DC area. We said, "Well, let's go to Greenville, South Carolina, because 'cause we'd heard that was a good place to live." That was crazy. So we went, took a trip there, and we loved it there. And I said, "Well, we won't have any of the family here." And he said, "Well, we'll move back to Roanoke in a few years. We'll just go down here for a while." But we loved it there. And then we were there 15 years. And I started getting it hankering. I wanted to go back to my hometown. And he told me, he said, "Anytime you want to move from here back to Roanoke," he said, "we'll go." And so, and we met wonderful people there, the church and everything. We had so many good friends. And so then from there, I said, "You said that we'd move back if I wanted to." And I said, "Let's think about going back." He said, "Okay." He said, "We'll do that." So we knew this couple from Roanoke. He was a builder, and he told us if we ever wanted to move back to Roanoke, he would build us a house, at cost. When that happened, when he told us that, we went to a funeral or something in Roanoke, and this was about 2 years before we moved, maybe 1 year or 6 months before we moved. He said, "If you want to move back here," he said, "I'd love for y'all to come back," because they were really good buddies.
Aw.
We talked it over, and he said, "He wants to build us a house. Good gracious, save us a lot of money. We could have a place where we wanted to go." And so then we went up and we looked around for lots and everything. And we saw one that we really liked in Vinton, Virginia, which is it's just next to Roanoke. It's the same place just about. And had a nice little view of the mountains and everything. And that was the only lot left in this little section. There were about was it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 7 houses there in this area. I said, "Well," I said, "let's see if this." It had a sold sign on the lot. Just asked had a phone number. Let's just call the guy and see if he wants to sell it. He said, "I don't think it's going to be possible." So anyway, we got the name. We called the guy and he said, "Yeah, I'd like to sell that." I mean, it just, and I tell you, the good Lord's watched over us all of our life, I think, and it's wonderful to have that field. And my husband was so excited. And he said, "I'll give you 35,000." I said, "Why did you do that? Why didn't you just ask him how much because he might have sold it for 30,000, 25,000." And that's not one like him. He was a finance person. He always would know exactly how to handle things. But he was so excited that he said he gave him a price instead of him giving us a price. So anyway, he said, "Oh yeah, I'll take that. I'll take that. That's good." But we paid him for the lot, and then our friend that we said if we moved back, he built our house for us at cost. And it was a beautiful home. I mean, it wasn't a really, and all the other homes that were in this little area were all individually built. So it was a real nice neighborhood, and people were very, very nice. So I don't know how I tell you, the good Lord has watched over us all the time we were married and before, because I always went to church when I was growing up. Believed, of course, and believed in God. And my family always went to church. And, but anyway, I just felt like the Lord was really working for us.
That's
And
awesome.
still is. We had the house built and we met all the neighbors were so nice, and we'd get together for picnics and just neighborly. When we got older, like I think we were 80 in our 88 or something like that. My son here, he said, "Y'all ought to think about moving pretty soon, selling your house." And the house was beginning. This was, I don't know, we lived there 20 years, I guess. And it was beginning to need some little work here and there. And I said, "Yeah, maybe this is not a bad idea. We're both getting older, and our children, of course, were grown, and we had one here, and wanted us to move here. And our other son was in Frostburg, Maryland. I don't know if you know where that is. Cumberland, Maryland.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, sold our house and moved here, and so we've been here ever since.
Wow.
And then when, maybe we were here about 3 years, And my husband, he wanted a shoulder replacement. And of course, my son was a doctor here in the ER.
Oh,
Uh-huh.
nice.
So he said, well, he said, you can come here and we got plenty of good doctors and you'll get your shoulder replaced. And so he did get his shoulder replaced. But then when he was taking his exercise from the shoulder replacement, his back kept bothering him. And so they would look at it and say, well, I don't know, your shoulders are doing fine. We don't know. So they took an x ray or something and they discovered he had the bone cancer of his neck bone. So then we went to a cancer specialist and he gave him
Chemo.
chemo. Uh, and he took that for 3 times, and he'd never been sick hardly at all in his lifetime, and he just couldn't take it, and men just, hate stuff like that, and so he finally said, the doctor told him, said, "If you take this, you'll live to be 98," because he was already, like, 88, 89, and so he said, "If you keep these treatments, you won't have any problem. You'll live to be an old person." Uh, he just couldn't do it. So he gave it up and he died. That was 3 or 4 years ago. And during the meantime, we lost our son that lived in Maryland because he got brain cancer.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, my son died after my husband died, and about a year after, actually. So that was pretty rough. I mean, my son had to have the operation to see if the cancer was non-malignant or malignant. So we went up when he had that operation, and they took the longest time to let us know. So finally, they came back and said, "Yeah, it was malignant, and it was pretty far gone." So he died about 6 months later. Then
Oh
after
my
my husband.
goodness. That's horrible.
Yeah,
Those that lived through such tumultuous time, I mean, all come out saying it was life, we moved on, no one got therapy. We just sucked it up and did it. And
well, that's right.
that's really amazing to come out of all of that mindset and
Yeah.
still being positive and grateful. And I just love that. And I think that's such a great piece for people to hear.
Yeah.
Because it was the period. But at the end,
We still came out of it.
yeah, came
Yes.
out and still positive and looking back on the good and not just dwelling on the negative. And I think
Right.
that's really it's an important piece to take away
Yes,
from that.
that's true. And a lot of the young people today, they don't know what it was like back then. I hate to say about the generation coming. We didn't have a lot of the stuff that they have now, all the play things you play with the computers and all that kind of thing. And I think we were so much better off in some ways that you know, you got acquainted with your neighbors because you didn't have anything else. You didn't sit at home doing this and that, and you were out in the air and the sunshine, and people were probably healthier back then, and you didn't have a lot of extra money for candy and sweets and all this stuff that wasn't good for you. You had more fresh stuff and good food. Maybe a lot of people did not have all that. I was very blessed that we had the farm food, and fruits, any kind of fruits all the time, even during the war when other people didn't have anything to eat. And that was a rough time for a lot of people. But we were very blessed when we were growing up that we had the farm and we had good food. And my father had 2 honeybee things, and uh, the all the fruit trees gave the honeybees whatever they needed to make the honey. And so I can still remember him going out with the thing on his head, and collecting the honey. We used to watch, and he didn't have anything on his arms, and the bees would be on his arms, and we'd look at him and say, "Good gracious, why aren't you being stung?" And he never got stung, but maybe he did, but he
Oh my
did.
goodness.
I think your generation was a little harder, I think, than actually we were, even though we had the war. The fact that you had more um, automated things, and your children especially, and um, maybe you kinda limit them as to how long they're on computer like a lot of parents do. But, we just didn't have any of that. We had to go outside. We had to get fresh air. We had to, just be out in the open with our friends and all. And so it was a little healthier atmosphere. I mean, that doesn't mean that all kids today are inside people. That doesn't mean that. But there's a lot of people that just don't like to go outside and play. They want to work on a computer or just watch a movie. I think all in all, the people at my table, we all say we were born in the best of times and that we lived in the best of times because you don't know what the future's going to be like. Think about all the things that have come into being in my generation and what's it going to be like, all this automated, computerized stuff. You don't know what's going to happen in the future. I mean, you think there's nothing else in the world to be invented, but yet there'll be plenty of things that smart people will come up with, and you just kind of feel a little sorry for your grandkids and growing up in the world now than we grew up. When we went to DC, my boys were still small, and so I worked part time, temporarily, like for Kelly Girls, or I don't know if you know, that's an organization that when you're working for them, they tell you where to go. That's a temporary agency.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I don't know if they were called Kelly Girl or not, maybe other names, but I wanted to be home with my boys as much as I could. So I didn't want a full time job that I go work every day. So I worked for that agency that would call and tell me where to go. Hey, they need a secretary over here, and so and so. Would you like to go take that job? It's going to be for a week. I said, yeah, I'll do it. So I might work for a week at this secretarial position, and then I'd be home a lot of the times when they would come home from school. I said, well, I can't work, but so and so, that's okay. You can get off at 3 if you want. So I was at home with them an awful lot when they were growing up.
Oh, that's
And
great.
yeah, it worked out. And I got to know so many people. I worked for, and I liked it because I wasn't compelled to have to stick at one job all the time. I was up meeting new people, and that affected my personality quite a bit. I think that you realize so many different types of people in the world. They all have different problems. And I was kind of like you interviewing me that I learned they would tell me through the lunch hour, my kid got in trouble the other day, and you just let them talk, and you got to know a lot about people. It was kind of a growing up situation for me, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed meeting different people, and I think it's affected my life now that I came here, and I went to so many different places, and it was a really good experience for me.
That's
And
awesome.
more so than if I'd had one job and you meet the same people every day. And I kind of enjoyed going to different places. And you'd be surprised the difference in companies, people. And finally, when we went to South Carolina, I worked for a group of lawyers. And I didn't work all the time. Just when somebody was on vacation, they would call me. And that was when computers were coming in. And I didn't know anything about computers. And the typewriters were different, the keyboard, the computers, and all this stuff. But you had so many people that the girls would be so helpful. I'd say, can you look at this? I can figure this out. They were all so nice. I really enjoyed that aspect of my working life. It's just, and it affects your personality to a certain degree. I was always a real shy person. I don't know, just my husband was always the outgoing one. And but it helped me grow up to a certain extent. On the job training of all the different companies in DC, they had a lot of different kinds of, government jobs that I went to, and it was kind of fun. Listen to a lot of stories, and it made me a better person, I think. And then I also learned a lot.
Sure.
So I got an education, actually. Well,
On the job training.
that's right.
If you could tell all the women today something, what would you tell them?
Oh my goodness. I don't know. Well, I guess an important aspect of my life was to believe in the Lord, to go to church, and to put others before yourself, and always be concerned with other people and their hardship, and listen. Listen to other people. So many times you want to talk about yourself so much. I mean, I was never, I always like to listen to people and some of the hardships they've had, and try to be a good friend. Help them as much as you can. Just be aware of other people and their problems. I know there's a lot of times when you're talking to people and you're serious, you want to say something. Then I've had people sort of uh, butt into, oh, yeah, that reminds me. When I was, and I had to go, I did this and I did that. And the conversation, they don't want to hear what you have to say.
Right.
And well, just let them talk. Maybe they feel compelled to tell something. Just let it go and let them talk.
Well, thank you so much for letting me talk to you and telling your story. And I appreciate you let me share your story too, because I know
Well,
lots of women will be really interested to hear it. For more information, visit my blog at rebelliouscorsets.com.